Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Thank you for tuning in to your daily dose of donkey with Ginger. I am your host, the Viking Donkey, and I will be going solo this week for our sports talk. So, what should we talk about this week with all the Jackson Jennets? Well, I guess we can start with news from the Steelers. We did have the re-signing of Vince Williams, which is a good thing, as we get to bring back linebacker depth, bring back a guy who's a really good blitzer out there. A little bit risky cutting him and then trying to bring him back, but hey, if it works, it works, and that's what happened this week. We went ahead, we brought back Vince Williams, so maybe we get to go ahead and keep it up, keep it going, keep seeing what's happening out there, because hey, he's back in the fold. He's going to be a member of the Steelers. And it's looking like things might be moving up. We might be building the better roster again. We are definitely a better team with him than without him. Maybe it opens up more of the draft board, which is what's getting close to be. So maybe we should talk about a little bit of the draft stuff. Like, all the talk I see is everyone loves Najee Harris. That's who they want to see the Steelers take. That seems to be the big go-to pick that everybody wants. And I'm just sitting here like, I don't know if I trust first round running backs. It's not that first round running backs are necessarily a bad pick. It's that first round running backs have a tendency of failing or not reaching potential. I mean, you could say that's the same with anyone. Any position has a chance of failing or coming up short, but I just running back to me is a position where if you look around the league, most of the guys who are big time guys weren't first round running backs. And even if you go back to the Steelers, remember we've used first round running backs and they haven't turned out to be great ones for us. So is a first round running back something we should be looking for, especially at pick 24, especially when running back is such a value you can get later in the draft? Personally, I would love to see offensive line, maybe a quarterback, but I understand when you brought back Ben and you did all these moves, you're not trying to take a quarterback in the first round unless you're trying to pull the Green Bay thing, which motivate your quarterback by drafting the potential replacement, I guess. Kind of worked out for Green Bay. I don't think the Steelers are the type of team to make that move. And if they don't trade up, who knows if any of the quarterbacks will even be there. I mean, my personal favorite quarterback going into this draft for a guy you can maybe get at the end of the first round was Mac Jones. But he seems to be doing the thing that was done with Baker Mayfield. When I loved him, I'm like, man, that's a guy you can get at the end of the first round. That's a first round, second round type of quarterback fringe guy. You can get him at the end of the round, and then all of a sudden the offseason starts happening, and next thing you know, there's all this love going around for him. And he goes from being the end of the first round guy to a potential top 10 draft pick. In Baker Mayfield's case, to a number one overall draft pick. I mean, I need to stop liking guys who seem like end of first round talent in terms of quarterback, because you know darn good and well, as soon as I say I like them, they're going to jump way up on the board. But as terms of quarterbacks out there, I was just curious what the Jackson Jennets out there felt. Who's the best prospect? Who do they like the most? I mean, I've been hearing Fields dropping down a lot of draft boards, and the question I have is like, why? The dude has crazy athleticism, has a pretty good arm, and I mean, if you take out in a crazy season 2 bad games, you're talking no one would be questioning how high he would go. All these guys at the top of the draft have big time talent, and then I guess there's question marks with them, as there is with any quarterback who comes out. But quarterbacks, you know they're going to go high. You know someone's going to fall in love. You know someone's going to take them. We've already seen the trading to position for the quarterbacks happen. Who knows how far it goes? For one, I'm curious to see how far it goes. I would love to see one of the big time quarterbacks fall to the Steelers. I would love to see the Steelers take one of these big time quarterbacks, but that does not seem like the likelihood of what is going to happen. It more seems that instant peace is going to be taken. And the big question for me becomes, is this instant piece one that's going to be a 10-year contributor to the Steelers? Or is this instant piece going to be a guy like a running back who, honestly, if you pay into a second contract, odds are you're going to overpay, because very few running backs who get paid into a second contract earn that money. Remember when the Steelers had a guy who was a second-round pick, I believe is what Le'Veon Bell was, and was the best running back in football for 2-3 years, had a slight little injury, and then next thing you know, he's barely a guy who anyone even really wants. Like, he's a guy who still hasn't signed right now. People are talking about, hey, maybe he comes back to the Steelers. The question is, do you spend that first-round pick on a guy like that? Do you spend a first-round pick on a guy who only gives you 3 years? Do you, in turn, take a guy who's maybe a future cornerstone if there's a quarterback out there, or an offensive tackle out there, because they last for a long time? Do you take a guy who has high upside but will need a little time to develop, a la Bud Dupree, guys along that line, Jason Worlds types of guys who are not going to contribute this year, but the next, after year 2, going into year 3, year 4, are huge, solid parts of the team? Are those the type of guys that the Steelers would be willing to take in this type of draft? If not, who is that best short-term guy? Is it Najee Harris? Or is Najee Harris just the next Leonard Fournette? Because we're here acting like, hey, if we draft a running back, that's going to fix all of our needs. Like, the offensive line's going to magically get some push because we drafted a running back. The running back himself is going to be an all-star. And this is the one I love to hear all the time is, well, sometimes you just have to have an all-pro running back. Well, dear Pittsburgh Nation, Steeler Nation, whatever we want to be called today, was not the man named James Conner an all-pro? So if we already had an all-pro, and it looks like he signed in Arizona, which, by the way, congrats, James. I'm glad to see you finally found a team. If he was not able to get it done behind a team last year, what makes us think this new scheme's going to get it done? I feel like we're putting a lot of ifs and buts into whether or not this team can be better than last year's team. And I'm all for what we did. I don't mind the going for it with a certain team. I would have preferred us to stay pat and just rebuild this roster, but we're past that. So if you're going to go for it, I don't mind making the signings, making a little money move. While it's not great, I would have preferred the money to be free next year. I understand they're trying to build the best roster today to play for tomorrow's games. Not to play for next year's games, but to play for tomorrow's game. I don't know if you should draft that way, though, because draft capital is so huge. That's why you're seeing all these teams trade up to make sure they're in position to get the quarterback. That's why you're seeing a team like San Francisco, who has a pretty decent quarterback in Garoppolo, looking like they're willing to move on from him and his contract and then take a young guy, because when you have that rookie quarterback, that rookie contract quarterback, it makes you able to sign such a better team than you could before. You don't believe it? Look at Kansas City. Their roster's looking a lot weaker this year than it did last year, and that's because they're starting to pay Patty Mahomes. Look at the rest of the teams in the AFC that were big-time competitors. They weren't really paying quarterbacks. They had those quarterbacks on rookie deals. You're talking Josh Allen. You're talking Baker Mayfield. You're talking Lamar Jackson. Even Ryan Tannehill was on like a more of a prove-it deal than a big deal, but now he's got the big money deal, so we'll see how Tennessee can go about that. You had the Colts sign a 1-year deal with a veteran quarterback to fill in a slot, but these teams with these young rookie contract quarterbacks are able to build these secondary huge rosters that let them take on an Odell Beckham Jr., that let you pay out big free agent money to Malik Jackson type of guys, who let you bring in all pros. And I feel like the Steelers should be trying to find that quarterback that lets them build now, so that the rebuild can be quicker. Because when you look at it, the quarterback normally, unless they're really, really hitting it, the first 2 years, it's nothing special. They're not killing it. They're not out there doing crazy, crazy stuff. Those quarterbacks take a year, 2 to acclimate, and then year 3, 4, and 5, the last 3 years on those rookie deals, is when these teams look like they're starting to push. Is when these teams, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, get that huge run. I'm not against the Steelers going in for this year. It's to the point where you have to support them going in because they already made the moves that you can't go back from it now. You've already paid the money. You've already moved the money. So whether we agree or not, whether we think this team was going to be competitive or not, the fact is, this is the team we have. We should get behind them. But does that mean we have to use the draft to supplement this roster? Does that mean we can't trade our second and third round pick to move up to get a quarterback if he's available? Let's say whoever falls, whether it be Mac Jones or Fields or any of the other ones, Lance, say any of them fall. That's a weird spot for Mannequin. Do the Steelers have the want to replace a quarterback who right now in his career looks more like Tommy Maddox than young Ben Roethlisberger? Do we have the want to, we told a guy, you're going to be back and we're going to help you the same way we did with Ben, but you know what? A sweet deal falls where we can move up 5 spots. So maybe just give up our second round pick and like a 4th round pick and move up and get a quarterback who they like. And I'm only saying if they like someone in this draft who falls. If you don't like the quarterback, you don't just move up to get a quarterback for the sake of having a quarterback. That's how you end up with Josh Allen. Or not Josh Allen, excuse me, Josh Rosen. I wish we'd end up with Josh Allen. That's how you end up with a Josh Rosen, a guy who people question his want to play football. Like, when a guy has a red flag like that, I'm not sure you want to do it, but let's say the quarterback, let's just put in hindsight and say the quarterback they like is Mac Jones. Let's say Mac Jones is available at 19. Are the Steelers willing to trade up to get the quarterback they like when they know it means it will hurt this year's team? Maybe they lose their first and second, or they lose their second round pick and spend their first round pick on a guy who they don't expect to play. Are they willing to use their top 2 draft capital to address a future need instead of a present need? Or are they going to sit pat and just draft the best player available at an obvious need? Let's call it the best player available at running back, because that seems to be the familiar one. And let's say it's not even Najee Harris. Let's say it's the kid from UNC. Are you willing to spend draft capital on a guy who maybe makes the team better? Or are we going to just draft best player available? Is it simply best player available despite need? Is it trade up to get a better player? Is it trade back because no one you really like is there and it's like, hey, we can get more value by just waiting a little bit and drafting one of these probably going to be available offensive linemen in early second round? Let's say you trade back to get into the early second round and you take one of those available offensive linemen. Maybe you take one of the running backs and you could just keep going forward. Is that the best way to build the current roster? Is the best way to build the current roster you draft a guy like Najee Harris? Is the best way to build the current roster actually to draft a quarterback and develop him? Maybe we try to do the whole, let's see if we can push Ben a little bit, because maybe we need to motivate our quarterback a little bit more. I know he came into shape or into camp in some of the best, not camp, so we didn't have camp, but he came into the season in some of the better shape he's been in a long time in Ben, but let's be honest, it's not like he was in good shape. He still looked like a standing statue back there. What is the move the Steelers should make here? Do they need to look at cornerback since we decided to cut Steven Nelson? Because it just seems like our whole goal all along was to replace him with Cam Sutton and save a little bit of money. Do we hope Steven Nelson comes back on lower money? Like, I don't feel like he will after the way that whole thing went down. And he probably deserves to get paid based off the way he's played the last 2 years here in Pittsburgh. But what is the move here? Do we trust the Steelers to draft a cornerback and see if he actually works out? Because let's be honest, our draft picks have been terrible. Cam Sutton might be the best corner we drafted in a while, and let's see how that works out when he becomes a full-time starter instead of a nickel. Like, I love him in the nickel. I'm not sure I love him playing on the outside. But I'm just sitting here, and I'm confused what the Steelers' way should be. It seems like experts are confused because they have us drafting 30 different ways. I've seen center, I've seen offensive tackle, I've seen running back, I've seen middle linebackers with some of the mock drafts that have, is it Micah Parsons, the middle linebacker out of Penn State, who's just an absolute athletic specimen out there, getting drafted by us if he falls? Do we look at a project outside linebacker, even though it seems like we're kind of content there? Do we draft a defensive end? Because, let's be honest, our ends are getting pretty old, and Hayward and Tuitt, and getting pretty expensive. Do we look to add to the cornerback? There's a lot of holes that need to be addressed. And for me personally, as I've been saying this whole time, I think they need to think about the future. I understand the draft is a great spot to maybe get a fill gap. Sometimes you can get a running back who comes in and absolutely kills it. But honestly, you probably could get that replicated production out of a mid-round running back, a late-round running back, and or one of the bajillion still free agent running backs that aren't terrible, if that offensive line's good enough. And the thing is, if that offensive line isn't good enough, even if we draft the first-round running back, he's not going to look great. And even if you draft a first-round running back, it doesn't guarantee you anything. I mean, yeah, Christian McCaffrey's great. Was Leonard Fournette worth a top 10 pick? Was Trent Richardson worth a first-round pick? And the thing is, you could argue Richardson was a guy who maybe shouldn't have been, but everyone agreed Leonard Fournette should be. And I mean, he had a good second stop in Tampa, but that's the thing. If it takes him, let's say he doesn't instantly acclimate, is it worth it if the guy's going to be just a average running back his first 2 years? Because really, if you're drafting a running back in the first round, especially with the way this roster right now is constructed, you are purely drafting in the first round because you want to draft the best player to help this team win tomorrow. If he doesn't help the team win tomorrow, it's a huge misstep. And I don't know what he's going to end up being. I mean, he looks good, but lots of prospects look really good there. And that's why I'm afraid, and when you're drafting, you have to draft for high tier potential. The thing is, you can't get just starters, you want to get all pros. Especially in your first round pick. So you don't want to pick those high floor, low ceiling guys. And maybe Najee Harris isn't that. Maybe he's a high floor, high ceiling guy more so because it's the running back position and that tends to fall. But when you're looking at prospects, you want to take the guys that can change a franchise. You want to take the guys who can just absolutely turn a team around. You want to take a Christian McCaffrey. And my biggest worry here is when you're drafting at 24, I don't think you're going to find that type of running back. I don't think you're going to find the perennial all-star type of player drafting that late. Like, look around the league, maybe I'm wrong, but think of running backs who are the faces of franchises. I feel like they weren't drafted late. Or were not drafted late first round type of guys, early second round. They were either guys who broke out of nowhere or they're guys like Christian McCaffrey who just absolutely kills it every day out there. And honestly, when I go around and I think about it, he's probably the only back I put in there. But then even think about that. He's been great, but look at all the games he's missed. Like, I wanted to get out and I wanted to point out that I am not a fan of drafting running backs early because first round talent should produce. That's where you should get your constant all pro. And the hardest position to do that is running back because they either don't mesh with the system, which when they go somewhere else they look fine, or they don't pan out to be that great. I mean, Aaron Williams wasn't a first round pick, I don't think, from the Green Bay guy. I mean, I hate getting first round running backs because one, you're lucky to get 5 good years out of a running back. Two, half the time, if not over half the time, they don't work out. And three, I really don't want to see in a time when draft picks are going to be huge for the Steelers because the cap situation isn't going to get better next year. So next year you're possibly looking at paying TJ Watt upper $20 million a year. I mean, you can't go out there and you can't miss. This is the draft pick. This is one that has to hit. Any way you look at it, whether it be you want to build the future Steeler team or you want to build the team right now, it's a team that it's a pick that has to hit. They have to hit on this draft pick. And I don't feel good about it being a running back. I feel like running backs are the most likely spot to get bad value out of. I know you could say, but there's a chance of game-changing value out of it. But honestly, there's 2 spots I absolutely hate drafting. Because you can get them from other teams when they get disgruntled. Running backs and wide receivers. I do not feel like first-round picks on running backs and wide receivers are really worth it. Unless you get Julio Jones. But at the same time, look at first-round draft pick receivers that have been traded recently. Or superstar talent receivers. You could have traded for like a Stephon Diggs. You could trade for an Odell Beckham Jr. You could trade for DeAndre Hopkins. The thing is, those positions just don't seem to get the value that you want. I mean, look at New England. Sonny Michel can't stay healthy out there. And that's a late first-round pick. That actually, or maybe he was second. But either way, that was an early draft running back. These are just the guys that come to mind right off the bat. I didn't do a super dive into it. Before I came on here, I read a bunch of mock drafts to see what I was going to talk about tonight. And it came into running backs. And I don't know. I feel like this is a spot where you need to get a value guy. So I want to see a high potential guy. I want to see a guy with the upsides of like Bud Dupree, maybe a polished guy, a guy you have to develop a little bit. Personally, I would love to see an offensive lineman, maybe a center. I don't know if there's a center who's worth a first-round pick. There's a lot of offensive tackles out there who are talented. We need one of those. Those are 2 spots that you can easily pick. You can normally just plug and play right off the bat if they're what they should be at drafting at 24 for an offensive lineman. And they can absolutely change your fortunes. Like, could you imagine having like a Tristan Wirfs out there on the offensive line just manhandling people? I just don't want to see the Steelers go the wrong way and take the type of player that, sure, if it actually does work out, could look good. But even if it looks good, how long is it going to last for? Is he even going to give you a full season? Is he even going to make it out there? I mean, I have to be honest. I've seen the mock drafts, and all they do is make me nervous. I can't wait to get into it more with Gingy. I'll have a little bit more on all the quarterbacks going in there because there's actually kind of a fun arms race going on, and who knows where any of these guys are going to go, what order they're going to go. I mean, outside of what's going on at 1, it looks like it's going to be a fun, just crazy go after quarterbacks, which I honestly can't wait to see happen. I'm excited to see how it happens. I'm excited to see who gets to come to Steeler Nation and become our next big-time player. Who knows what position you're going to play, what they're going to be. I'm not sure what we get. I'm going to hope for the best out of it. I'm going to be a little bit nervous if it goes a couple ways. But at the end of the day, who knows? Maybe the Steelers go out and do something super crazy and get a tight end if there's a tight end out there who's worth it. Maybe they do take that offensive lineman. Maybe they do take a quarterback. Maybe they take a running back, and maybe that running back turns into something super special instead of something just average. Maybe just average is what we need. I have no idea. All I know is it's a fun time of year because all you have to do is be super positive. I was a hugest Pirates fan for forever, so I understand how the offseason, all you want to do is be positive, even if things look dreadful when you look at them in a realist scope. The offseason is the time for optimism. It's the time to look through your rose-colored glasses. I wish Gingy was here to give y'all a little more view of rose-colored glasses, because that's not exactly my cup of tea anymore since, being a Pirates fan for so long, I learned how to be just a realist so that I don't have these expectations where my heart just gets broken 2 steps into the season. And or you could say being a Steelers fan for the past decade, since all we ever talk about is how this is the team to get us the numbers, to get us the next one, to be the great one to cap off the Roethlisberger Hall of Fame thing. And something happens. Every time something happens. I mean, it's crazy. It happens. I'm looking forward to getting into more draft talk next week. Hopefully you don't just have a 20, 30-minute rant of what's going on in my mind, because that can be a little confusing, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I got a little lost there. I wasn't the best prep. I did take a nap right before I got on here, so I was a little more amped up to go, and my mind was probably a little more confused because, disoriented from sleep time. But, hey, it was a great time out here. I had a great day. I celebrated my son's birthday. That was fun. I appreciate everybody who watches this. Thank y'all for showing up. I guess it's time for me to do a shout-out. And I just want to do a shout-out to anyone who still listens out there for us. I really do appreciate it. It's awesome. I'd love to get you guys to actually comment a little more, because I'd love to get a conversation going where I get to intertwine the thoughts that are coming from the community, put a little spin on them, give you my take on the thoughts. Let's see if we can come up with something smart together to talk about going into the future. But yeah, so my shout outs to all you guys who actually do listen. I love getting any feedback, anyone who tells me what's going on. Positive, negative, dude, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, all feedback's good feedback when you're in here, because all you can do is get a little better every day, have a little more fun with it, and that's what the goal is here, is to have fun with it. With that, I'll let you know, you can reach me on the socials, Viking_Donkey at Twitch, Viking_Donkey on Twitter. Go ahead and send me an email. You can find the link in the YouTube. At the YouTube, you catch us a Daily Dose of Donkey with Ginger. And once again, thank y'all for showing up. I appreciate the half hour of your life you spend with me every week, if that's what you do, half hour to an hour. I really love it. It's Steeler Nation. You know what to do. Wave them if you got them, baby.